Estão-me a ouvir? Bom dia. Now it's okay. I will speak with all of you. First of all, greetings and opening of the first International Congress, Resilience in Higher Education and Resuperes multiple event. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the University of Algarve, School of Education and Communication. Good morning, dear Rector of the University of Algarve, to give the honor to be with us in these two events. Good morning, our dear Director of School of Education and Communication, our Erasmus, our General Coordinator of Resuperes Erasmus Network, our project, Resilience in Higher Education, Professor Resuperes, and our dear Erasmus Coordinator of the University of Algarve, Dr. Marlene Azevedo. Thanks a lot, all of us, to be here in this table to us. I wanted to thank a lot to the Professor António Lacerda, because during all this time of this Resuperes project, always he helps us and gave us a lot of motivation to carry on this project. Thanks a lot, Professor António Lacerda. And first of all, as well, I would give our greetings to the individuals and participants who gave us the honor of being present at the opening session of these two events. Our first Resuperes International Congress and the second multiple event begins today within the framework of the project coordinated by the University of Algarve by Professor Resuperes. A special thanks to the Portuguese team. Now I see Professor Maria Leonor because I didn't see her. The Portuguese team, and they are here, made up of teachers and staff who were a fundamental flash keepers in the organization of this event. Without their help and constant support, this would not have been possible, as well as high thanks to the entire international team of the Resuperes project. Thanks a lot, all the Portuguese team and all the staff and all our colleagues from the international team of this Resuperes project. In fact, and during the implementation of this project, the support of the entire Resuperes project team, not only from Portugal, but also from all countries, the 5 countries, was essential to help build resilience through the group, in which the social, emotional, cultural, empathic, and communicational interrelationship represent an essential point of support of this scientific trajectory with students and with teachers. Some of students are not here, but they are with us online because, and good morning for all of you, our students, because in this moment in Portugal, in the Algarve, University of Algarve, is holidays for them. Our second semester will begin next month. As education is one of the most important factors in the development of societies, all the more so because its deepening is a fundamental requirement for the understanding of social expectations and, likewise, an important contribution to the definition of new objectives, activities, and good professional practice, both nationally and internationally. We understand that these two events The first International Congress and Multiplier event, the second, is extremely important as it can contribute to the promotion and sharing of a broader educational experience with more flexible learning models and, who knows, to the incorporation of training in resilience in education, specifically in the syllabus of national and international curricula, not only in higher education, but perhaps, that is a dream, but we never know, at all levels of education. Effectively, the Resuperes project emerged with the aim of creating an intervention program and tools in the context of higher education that improves and develops resilience constructs, so important for all of us, such as coping, self-concept, self-esteem, leadership, teamwork, and so on, and based on skills in the areas of physical activity, of the digital and communication world, the performing and visual arts and culture, which generate resilient behavior patterns, areas considered priority in the development of these constructs, and which can be extrapolated to the different stages of teacher and student training. According to recent studies, higher education can be a moment of vulnerability for both, and that is a fact, students and teachers, which is why today and tomorrow it is intended to present, debate, disseminate, and promote the importance of developing resilience, extending to all levels of education beyond the university. This Congress and this multiple event on resilience aims to promote a holistic and multifaceted approach to education, which integrates the value of supporting students, not only academically, but also in terms of their personal, social, emotional, motivational, and mental health well-being in the face of the crisis that many students face, with increasing levels of stress, anxiety, isolation, depression, burnout, school drought, difficulties in overcoming failures and adversity, among others, and you know that very well. Recognizing that it is essential to promote the development of resilience as a fundamental part of the teaching process, this International Congress and this multiple event aims to draw attention to the urgency of national and international educational policies that consider resilience as a key factor for the success and sustainability of teaching and education. Thank you very much for all of you. And now we have the honor of listening to His Excellency, the Rector of the University of Algarve. I give.
Good morning to all of you. I'm starting by the members that are here in this opening table. Welcome to the University of Algarve. Special thanks also to the keynote speakers of the plenary sessions, Professor Rui Vieira Neri, and Professor Joaquim Azevedo. And of course, a warm welcome to all of you that travel from other countries to be here, these 2 days with us. So many thanks for this invitation. I had the opportunity already to contact to some of you a couple months ago, in March this year, when we had a meeting also here at the University of Algarve. For the University of Algarve, it is quite important. This project. resilience is an agenda topic in the University of Algarve, as in all the universities in Portugal. Nowadays we are implementing two institutional projects. One that we call We Care, and We Care, it's a project that aims to develop a mental health and well-being service at the University of Algarve. For a long time we have already psychological services, but we want to do more that we are doing till now. And we have another project that we called, in Portuguese the acronym is SOWALG, which means, if you can translate an acronym to English, is I am WALG. WALG is from University of Algarve, and it aims to implement initiatives through the system of observing and promoting academic success and reducing dropout through pedagogic innovation and other activities that Carolina has already mentioned. So I hope that that you can have here good 2 days of work. Unfortunately for you, we don't have the sun to offer you. Usually the visitors, when come to the Algarve or to Portugal, they enjoy our beautiful blue sky. But we have what we want very much, that it's rain, and we need quite a lot of water for those days. Of course, that the water could come later in this week. Nevertheless, so I hope that you can have here all the conditions to develop your work, and we expect the results of your project to spread to all the universities. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for the invitation. And Professor Joaquim Azevedo, unfortunately, I'm not able to attend to your conference. I'm just able to attend to the first conference, which is from Professor Rui Vieira Neri. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear Rector of the University of Algarve. And now we go to have the honor to listen our Director of School of Education of Communication, Professor Pedro Calado.
Good morning to you all. I welcome you all. I know, and it has been said before, that the weather is not really being clement on us. So I think we should show some resilience to the weather. And there's a Portuguese saying that when it rains at wedding, it says casamento molhado, casamento abençoado, which means more or less that when it rains on a wedding, that marriage will be fruitful. So I hope that's the case here. I want to thank our rector, Professor Carolina, the Erasmus project coordinator, Marcia Pero, and our Erasmus coordinator, Marlene Azevedo, and to you all, I mean to both our key speakers, Rui Vieira Neri and Joaquim Azevedo, and the presence of the teams of Belgrade, Bergen, Granada, and Unisob Napoli. I hope that the rain won't stop us for enjoying not only the work that you are doing here now, which I'm sure will be fruitful, but also some possibilities of seeing what the city has to offer, maybe later in this day. Thank you, and I now pass you to Mar Sepero. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning everyone. Excellent Rector of the University of Algarve, Director of the Escola Superior de Comunicación y Education, college, professionals, students, Resuperes team. I would like to begin my speech by thanking to the University of the Algarve at all levels, from the rectors to the person is chance of receiving the communication of everyone. Thank you, because the first is for welcoming us and working like as a team, so that the event we are starting today is held in a magnificent way. Thank you. On the level of international congress, it's wonderful for me and for Carolina I think that was be able to finish the Resuperes project in the place where it was born the idea of this project. Thank you to the Resuperes Portugal team. Thank you so much in my heart, because the organization of the Congress is very difficult. It's very difficult. And for coordinating of all Resuperes team and attending to the particularities of the age thing, which although it seems easy, there are many kilometers between us, lending and deciding, but there are always difficult moments. But I congratulate, because for you always mediating and adaptable and resilient attitude. Thank you so much. All mistakes to the Congress will be the general coordinator, of course. I assume always. To age coordinator or member to Resuperes team, Italy, Norway, Serbia, Spanish and Portugal, for the provisions and facilities to all times in these projects and in each moment, and for traveling to share this wonderful event that is designed for culminate our project. Well, on the part one, no? Maybe the part one, no? What do you think, Coral? Although we have covered it so much, I don't know if we will come up with anything else, but I am sure. Resuperes team is wonderful. And thank you so much for the speech that today is with us. Boris Cirilnet, that is in online, is the high level and very interesting and important for our project. And finally, thanks to all the colleagues from all education institutions and other professionals who have wanted to share with this our experience with and are here in person or online. We want your feedback on our work, because it's very important that we make us ground. And come on, let our Congress begin.
Yes.
Yes?
And now it's Professor.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the University of Algarve. Magnificent Rector of University of Algarve, Professor Paulo Águas. Dear Director of the School of Education and Communication, Professor Pedro Calado. Dear President of Congress, dear Professor Carolina de Souza. Dear General Coordinator of the Erasmus Plus Resuperes Project, Professora Marce Pero.
Thank you so much.
Dear partners Resuperes from the University of Granada, from the Western Norway University of Applied Science, from the Università degli Studi Suor Sola Benincasa, from the University of Algarve, and of course from the University of Algarve. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to be here today and contribute to starting the Resuperes International Congress. The Resuperes project is a project funded by the European program Erasmus+, approved in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic, which began in February 2022, and very soon will come to an end. Resuperes is an important project that has dedicated its attention to the vulnerability the students and teachers face when assessing higher education, and which can contribute to isolation, serious problems, health, and social dropout, among other dilemmas. The main objective of this project is to analyze, design, and evaluate an intervention program in the educational context of higher education, developing the construct of resilience, such as coping, self-concept, self-pain, self-esteem, leadership, etc., and based on competence with the areas of health, the digital communication and world, the performance and visual arts and culture, which generate resilience behavior patterns, as they are considered important areas in the development of this construct. Over 2 days, the results achieved by a multidisciplinary team composed by 5 partners universities will be shared communications, workshops, and networking that will also take place. Resuperes is a project that began in February 2022 and will be end next 27th of February, and which will certainly leave many recommendations for everyone who in one way or another has an intervention role in higher education. My greatest hope is that the work achieved on resilience education does not end, and that it can serve to the inspiration for the development of new Erasmus Plus projects in this area. I wish you all 2 excellent days full of works and joy. Thank you very much.
Before finish this section, I would like to give last thanks to all of you who are here and we are online. To our students who are online, the students of Resuperes project, thanks a lot for your commitment. Thanks a lot for to be always with us. Thanks a lot for what you gave to us. And I want to thank all this table who are here with us, with our dear rector, our dear director of School of Education, our dear Erasmus general coordinator of this project, of Dr. Marlene, the international coordinator of office, Erasmus office. And I would like to thank a lot to the Portuguese team, to Professor Hugo Martires, who was with me. He designed and he dreamed with me this project in the beginning of the beginning. Thanks, Professor Hugo Martires, Professor Marisa Martires, and Professor Maria Leonor Borges, Professor Carla Dionísio, Professor António Lacerda, and Professor Pedro Calado, Professor Jorge Santos, Professor Aurizanica, Professor António Lacerda, I already told. And I would like to thank a lot all the staff, Maria Filomena Salve-Rainha, Rui Duarte, Manuela Roldão, all of you, you are excellent team, staff and teachers. And as well, my dear coordinators of all the 5 countries. I began with the Marcia Pero, the general coordinator of this project, Resuperes, the Western Science Applied Bergen University, Professor Coral and his team, thanks a lot. Professor Fabrício from Sor Úrsula Benincasa, the University of Algarve works a lot of years, since '94, with this university. I was Erasmus coordinator and I was there since from the last century. And Federica, thanks a lot. Paolo, Stefania, Jean-Marie, and I would like as well. Quem é que falta? I think. And we must speak about the 2 colleagues from the University of Belgrado, the Professor Oliveira and Professor Dragon. They are there, and all of you from Portugal, Alexander as well. You are online, so a big hug from the University of Algarve for all of you who are online. Thanks a lot. You are all excellent. And for Professor Boris Cyrulnik, if you are online, we send the link for you. We will wait to be with you and listen to you at 5 years in Portugal, 6 hours European hour in France. And thanks a lot all of you in person and online. And now we go to have the honor to be 2 marvelous Portuguese speakers. And I think that a lot of people who are here, and that is for our rector and for our team who are here, We profit, all of us that are in, some of us, we are in this room, we profit to see last year in the Museum of Fado, we listen Professor Rui Neri. Today we have the honor to listen him and to listen someone very important as well, like Professor Rui Neri, Professor Joaquim Azevedo from Oporto. And I don't give any more details because it will be a moment to listen to our two Portuguese speakers. Thanks a lot. And I forget, but not always, I don't forget you. The Spanish team, we are always with us. Diego, Charri Padial, Iago, our student, Laura, all of you, you are always with us. Inês, all the volunteers, the people who are here with us, thanks, we are with us. Rafael Caracoel, thanks very much, Professor, for your help in this Resuperes project. All of you in person and online, our greetings, and I hope you enjoy our work and our of these 2 days, our work and what you can learn from this work. Thanks and good morning for all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and teachers for all levels of teaching, because I know that there is a lot of people who are not from higher education. Thanks a lot to be with us in this Resuperes project. Good morning and thank you. Não sei se...
Quando aqui? Por aqui?
Digo aqui que se vea. Ou ali, assim.
Ou aqui para o Sr. Reitor. Não sei.
Nos quedamos aquí, mejor para la luz. Nos quedamos aquí, mejor para la luz.
Olivera, Coral. Olivera.
¿Te ajuda?
Não é isso. Eu não sei para onde é que...
Serbia. Portugal.
António Lacerda. Está aqui a Coral?
Coral sí está ahí. Coral está ahí. Vamos, Pedro.
¿Te ajuda?
Não.
¿No?
Hello everyone, a very good morning to all of you, those who are in the room and those who are watching us online. Thank you very much for your presence. Well, I'm just telling you short words about the next guest speaker, Mr. Rui Neri. Well, Rui Neri is well known in Portugal because he has done some important jobs which involved all the country, like the scientific supervision and coordination of the candidacy of Fado to UNESCO Cultural Heritage. So these are his credits, and we thank him very much for that. Well, he was also director of the music department of Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation. Well, a very important professor on musicology in the university, the new university in Lisbon. Well, and many other aspects. So, we thank you very much for coming, for accepting our invitation, which sometimes is not easy to conciliate everything. So, you may ask, finally, you may ask what Fado, which is the topic of the conference we're going to listen, has to do with resilience. Okay? And I'm going to answer this question with another question. Can we consider Fado one demonstration of high resilience of some communities, and the Portuguese people? We will certainly hear some answers to this question by Professor Rui Neri. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jorge. Will we move on to the PowerPoint, please? Good morning, everybody. Magnificent Rector, distinguished academic authorities, Professor Joaquim Azevedo, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. I think part of the answer to the question that Professor Jorge Santos has placed here lies already in the title of my presentation, Portuguese Fado as a Dynamic Heritage, a Story of Resilience. Let me take you back to the 27th of November 2011 in Bali, Indonesia, where the General Committee on Intangible Cultural Heritage of UNESCO met and approved the inscription of Portuguese Fado in the representative list of intangible cultural heritage of UNESCO. This was the Portuguese delegation. At the center, you will recognize the current President of the European Council, António Costa, who was then the Mayor of Lisbon, Lisbon being the entity that submitted the nomination. To the right, there's the President of the National Committee, Portuguese Committee of UNESCO, and to the left, that's me as Chairman of the Scientific Committee. We look very relieved because this was right after the nomination was approved. And right before the approval of the Fado nomination, immediately preceding it was the nomination of the Mexican mariachis. So the moment the nomination of the mariachis was approved, there was a troupe of mariachis who entered the stage with sombreros and guitars and ay, 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 and everything was a big party. And then when we went on into the discussion of our nomination, António Costa and I were looking at each other. Well, we didn't know we could bring music. What can we do? We must do something. And so we just dived in. And António said, well, I have some photos on my iPhone. So we quickly searched through his iPhone and found the perfect photo that could illustrate our nomination. Could we listen to a bit of example of one? It was easy to choose this particular fado because its name is Estranha Forma de Vida, What a Strange Way of Life. If you're a movie fan, there's a new picture by Pedro Almodóvar, which is based precisely on this particular song, or uses it deeply. And the voice is that of Amália Rodrigues, the greatest fado singer ever. The music is by one of the greatest ever composers of fado, Alfredo Marceneiro. The accompaniment is by my father's ensemble, Raul Neri, who was very acclaimed accompanist as a performer of Portuguese guitar. So you had the best of the best of the best. But of course, that places an interesting theoretical and practical problem. The last thing we wanted was to give the impression that fado was just that it had always been like this, and that it should always be like this. In fact, fado, as every cultural manifestation, is an ever-evolving genre. And there was a bit of a debate within the fado community, because as you know, nominations for the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage Program are no longer based on a quality evaluation of the proposal. No one is going to tell you that fado is good or bad as music or as culture. They're going to look into the way it reflects the identity of a certain community and the values and the goals and the connecting traits of that particular community. And that's what was at stake. So we involved the community deeply into the preparation of the nomination. And in fact, some people thought that the nomination should be almost like a sort of USDA approved stamp of certification, that we should tell the world what fado is and what it is not. And our position was completely different. We meant to show how fado had been throughout its history, how it was at a certain point, and how it might evolve. And so we saw ourselves not as judges evaluating the authenticity of a genre, but as witnesses testifying to an ever-going process of change. Basically, we want to show how fado was born, how it adapted to each new historical and social context, how it persisted, and how it adapted, how it survived, therefore. In fact, every artistic practice needs to do two things to survive. It must persist, by which I mean it must keep certain characteristics that define it, that give identity to it, without which it would be unrecognizable as such. But at the same time, it must adapt in a constant dialogue with other artistic expressions and in a permanent matching of the changes that occur within the community that practices it. By persisting and by adapting, it ensures its survival, and it's why, as I said, the history of fado is a story of resilience. And what I'm trying to do with this particular presentation is to show you how throughout these 200 years of its history, fado in many occasions managed to keep up its identity in order to be recognizable as a constant tradition, but at the same time adapt and evolve, facing not only the expansion of its social basis, but also its constant dialogue with other musical and artistic practices. Let's go back to the very early 19th century when we have the first descriptions of fado, and some talk of it already as a sung dance that had entered even the salons, the drawing rooms of the middle classes. Here we have a party at Rio de Janeiro with a singer singing at the side of the piano, and the ladies and gentlemen of the house are listening, and of course you have an African enslaved waiter there. That's a portrait of colonial Brazil. But we know that, in fact, this was already an elaborate revision of a basic tradition of sung dance, or danced song. The order of the factors is arbitrary. That was born within the African Brazilian communities working in the plantations of coffee and cotton in Brazil. And of course, these were people who had been brutally taken off their native country, forced to go overseas and work under the direst conditions. And dance and song were means of keeping their identity, their memories, their collective conscience. And the kind of music and dance they practiced was a mixture of their own African traditions and of elements they absorbed from the culture, the European culture that had been brought by the Portuguese. So it's already a phenomenon of simultaneously persistence and adaptation, in the sense that it was the result of the encounter, albeit a violent encounter, but nevertheless an encounter of two cultures. And here you have begging for the festival was Nossa Senhora da Atalaia. So this was a traditional procession that took place in colonial Brazil and also throughout Portugal to this day. It's a very popular feast in Lisbon, for instance. And people would go around collecting alms to pay for the costs of the celebration. And here you have at the very extreme right, at the side of the drum players, you have a couple dancing fado, with bent knees, with raised hands, snipping their fingers to the rhythm. And of course, if this would be a moving picture, you'd see the hips swinging and the navels touching, what they call umbigada, or the legs touching, pernada. So that would be a very hot, intense, sensuous dance. Let me give you an example of how some of these original African Brazilian dances sounded like. It's example number 3. Could you have a bit more volume? Pode subir o volume, por favor? Yeah, that's it. See, there's a balance between two chords. Tonic chord, which is static, and the dominant chord, which is unstable. And then you go back to the stable chord, and it's a sort of a pendular move. Harmonically, it's very simple. And the most characteristic element is the beat, and the sort of syncopation against the beat. A famous Portuguese writer of the 19th century, Camilo Castelo Branco, described this feeling of the rhythm of fado as putting unwilling tremblings in our buttocks, tremores involuntários nas nádegas, which is what people who were not of African origin might have felt when they listened to this music and saw this dance. It was something that was sketchy, and the rhythm would just take over your body and you would find yourself swinging to it. And that's why it became so popular. And in fact, when the royal family of Portugal, which had emigrated to Brazil in 1807, escaping the invasion of the armies of Napoleon Bonaparte, and when they came back to European Portugal in 1821, gradually relationships between colonial Brazil and Portugal were re-established, even though in the following year Brazil will become independent, but the political independence didn't change this constant circulation of people and goods and physical goods and immaterial goods. And so this dance, this song and dance, because the two elements are combined, gradually arrived to Lisbon, to the capital of the kingdom. And it didn't come with the king and the court. By that time, the elites had forgotten about fado, had thought it was fun to do a bit of African dance as a sort of an exotic thing, and they had moved on into the waltz and all the new dances that were typical of the European courts of the 19th century. But the humble people, the working class people, the excluded of the Lisbon society, took up this song, which had these strong roots of protest and of identity affirmation in its original context. And so, here we have already in the mid-19th century a typical scene of a tavern in Lisbon, so a place of sociability of the working classes in the poorest neighborhoods of the capital. And what you have are two drunken sailors, one of whom is playing the guitar to the right. You have the tavern owner leaning against the counter back there. At the back, you have the stuff to fry the sardines. You have the wine caskets. And in the middle, you have a waitress, dash oldest profession in the world, dancing with a black sailor. So the same atmosphere that you would find in the descriptions of popular fado in Brazil brought over to Lisbon. And in fact, fado was taken over by this circuit of lower class neighborhoods, where working class people and all kinds of excluded people, one with one foot within the law and the other foot outside of it. So pickpockets, cheap burglars, prostitutes, pimps, together with factory workers. Industry was developing in Lisbon by that time. Servants of domestic service, people who worked in commerce in the lowest grades. And by the end of the day, they'd get together in those taverns and in street festivities, and they would sing and dance the fado. And sing and dance, in fact, is quite important to keep this association till the end of the 19th century. Here you have a caricature already dated from around 1890, and it's by one of the most popular caricaturists, Rafael Bordal Pinheiro, in Portugal. And it portrays the leaders of the political parties of the constitutional monarchy in the 19th century dancing the fado with Zé Povinho, that fat chap in the middle, who is the caricature of the Portuguese people. It's like Uncle Sam for the Americans or John Bull for the British. So the political leaders are trying to convince Zé Povinho to vote for them. And the best way they can do it is by dancing the fado with them. So you have Fontes Pereira de Mel holding a little guitar, and on the lower strip, there he is dancing the fado with Zé Povinho, which is a good caricature of electoral campaigns at all times. And here you have the penultimate king of Portugal, King Charles, dancing the fado with his prime minister, José Luciano de Castro. So the king to the left, the prime minister to the right, the king playing the guitar, and of course they're all dancing the fado. And here you have the first icon, the first recognizable icon of fado performance, a prostitute of the neighborhood of Moraria called Maria Severa. And Severa, by 1940, became the mistress of the head of one of the most distinguished aristocratic families in the country, the Earl of Vimioso. And as such, she was brought into his palace, one of the largest aristocratic palaces in Lisbon, and she was presented to his chic friends. In fact, we know that one time they went to the opera house, to São Carlos Theatre, and when the opera was over, he invited all his friends to come back to his palace, and he presented Severa, and she sang and danced for them, and it was a smashing hit. And it meant that gradually, even people who did not belong to the social community of father performance, so people who were not amongst the poor, the exploited, the excluded, the oppressed, but who were from the middle classes and even from some fringes of the aristocracy, began to realize that fado was interesting. And Severa, by the fact that she was the first to be, in a way, exalted from this low-class community into overall fame, was portrayed constantly, romanticized. In a way, she was our lady of the camellias. This is in 1931, the first sound picture made in Portugal, which was dedicated to her. We'll talk about that later. But of course, who were the agents? Who were the people who practiced fado? What kind of social areas did they represent? Well, here you have the so-called faia. And the faia is a bit like the Parisian apache, the no good, the guy who doesn't hold a regular profession, who lives from expedience and some not so honest ways of making money. He may be included probably a pimp with several women under his quote-unquote protection. And here they are leaning against the wall, playing the guitar, looking cool. And here is one of the most famous paintings in Portuguese art history, 1910. It's called O Fado, the Fado. And it's a scene from a brothel. So here you have your prostitute, you have her pimp, and they're being portrayed as a symbol of moral decadence, but at the same time a symbol of a certain pride in their own condition. And in fact, the painter Malhoa, the greatest painters of the turn of the century in Portugal, hired two actual characters, a prostitute called Adelaide da Facada, Adelaide of the knife stab, and Amancio, her lover. And he painted them over a number of sessions of posing, and then he exhibited the painting. The painting became very famous, had very good reviews in the papers, and then Amancio, the guy, thought he had not been sufficiently paid, and he came with his knife trying to get some more money, and apparently the police had to interfere. But my point is that this is the underground of fado. But you also have working class people. These are sailors getting ready to board for a fishing campaign. And then you have the family saying goodbye to each other. And to the right, you see one guy smoking his pipe, or thinking about what he's leaving behind, and the other one playing the guitar, ready to sing the fado. And you also had a century-old tradition of blind men who would sing in the fairs and in the public markets. Usually they would be accompanied by a child guiding them, and they would be singing fados, and they would often sell a little sheet of paper with the lyrics of the fados they were singing. And at a time when most of the working class people were illiterate, fados were often the way of carrying across the news of the life of the nation and of the community. I still remember, I'm 67, going on 68. And when I was a small child, I remember Feira do Lado on the old market in Lisbon, where we still had blind beggars singing and selling the lyrics, talking about famous crimes, for instance. And these are some of the taverns that still functioned as the most characteristic places of performance of fado. You can see it's far from being a palace. It's a ran-down tavern where people get together, they drink wine. Now, what kind of melodies were there within fado? Which were the most characteristic melodies in Fado. Fado has a specific element that makes it quite different from many other song traditions, and that's the fact that with the same melody you can sing no matter which lyrics that fit the metrics. So if you have a strophe of 4 verses and each verse with 7 syllables, that will fit. And you can make up your own lyrics. For instance, I could be here and singing a Fado to you, God forbid, and I could be thinking of the splendid outfit of Carolina and how she looks wonderful, and I would improvise poetry dealing with this, and then I'd see someone I don't particularly care for, and I'd start to make fun of him, and that would be half improvised on some of those melodies. Let me give you a few of the most oldest and most characteristic melodies, some that are still sung today. So here we have the persistence, the continuity, the element that stays as an anchor of identity. The first one is what we call the fado corrido. Correr in Portuguese is to run. And it doesn't mean that it's got to be very fast. It means that it runs from stanza to stanza, from strophe to strophe. And the same melody is repeated over and over and over, covering each new stanza of the poem. And the poem usually is a narrative describing a certain situation. And before the advent of the recording industry, there were no limitations of timing. So you could sing a fado for 10 minutes, as long as you had new stanzas adding up. Of course, with the recording industry coming in, you only had 3 minutes to do it. So fados were shortened to match the length of usually pop songs. Let's then hear example 4, please. 4. Vamos subir bocadinho o volume.
A casa de Mariquinhas tem na sala uma guitarra, janelas com tabuinhas. Tem na sala uma guitarra, janelas com tabuinhas. Vive com muitas amigas, aquela de quem vos falo. E não há maior galo de vida de raparigas. E não há maior galo de vida de raparigas.
You basically have 2 verses with musical phrase, and then 2 verses with a second musical phrase answering the first, and you're done with the melody. Then you start over again with a new stanza, and of course you cannot repeat it exactly the way it was, otherwise you'd be shot after the 3rd time you'd sing the same. So the secret in a good fado performance is how to improvise, how to introduce variations in melody according to the meaning, the specific meaning of the words sung in each stanza. Passar para o seguinte. It can be faster. Subir o volume, por favor. This is the same fado, but on a faster pace.
No velho fado corrido, se foste dos mais bairristas, porque te mostras esquecido na garganta dos fadistas, porque te mostras esquecido na garganta dos fadistas. E explicou-me um velho amigo como o fado era tratado, tinha graça ao fado antigo, da forma que era cantado, tinha graça ao fado antigo, da forma que era cantado. Um rambleiro à porta indicava uma taberna, um rambleiro à porta indicava uma taberna, e à noite era uma lanterna com
See, the dance has disappeared.
à noite era uma
From the late
lanterna.
19th century on, practically it disappears. What you still keep is a certain beat. You often see the fadista singing and his shoulders and his body are sort of swinging along with the rhythm, which is sort of the consequence of that dance tradition that was lost, but is still present in the sense that the body feels the rhythm.
Nesta função, como o fado era tratado, e era assim nesta função, como o fado era tratado.
Para o 6. Now this is Fado Moraria. It's like the corrido, the major mode, but it's slower and it's a march rhythm.
Quem por amor se perdeu,
1, 2, 3, 4.
não chore, não tenha pena. Quem por amor se perdeu,
Lucília do Carmo.
não chore, não tenha pena. Uma das santas do céu foi Maria Madalena, desse amor que nos encanta. Até Cristo padeceu para poder tornar santa quem por amor se perdeu. Jesus só nos quis mostrar que o amor não se condena. Por isso, quem sabe amar, não chore, não tenha pena.
And this is the Fado Menor. It's exactly like Fado Corrido, but it's in a minor mode, very slow, very dramatic, very expressive, very intense. Vamos subir?
A volta atrás, vida vivida, aí eu tornava a ver. Volta atrás, vida vivida, aí eu tornava a ver aquela vida perdida que nunca soube viver. Aquela vida perdida que nunca soube viver. Voltar de novo, quem dera, a tal tempo, que saudade. Voltar de novo, quem dera, a tal tempo, que saudade. Volta sempre a primavera, só não volta a mocidade. Volta sempre a primavera, só não volta a mocidade.
Okay, so these are some of the most characteristic melodies of Fado, and as I said, some melodies that are still sung today. Now, Fado quickly becomes the popular song of Greater Lisbon. And then it starts expanding gradually to other parts of the country, but very slowly. By and large, throughout the 19th century, it's mostly a song of Lisbon, with one exception. There was only one university in Portugal, and that was in Coimbra, at the center of Portugal. And so Coimbra was the point where the boys from, well, wealthy enough families that could send their boys to school would go. And of course, going to school, going to the university, we all know it's the main purpose of students going to the university to have fun. And so, characteristically, an university community is also a bohemian community that has a lot of nightlife, a lot of drinks, a lot of things that one cannot talk about in a decent conference, but are implied. And so therefore, the song that was a song of the night, the song of drinking, the song of easy love, the song of partying, was transplanted to Coimbra as a characteristic song of the academic community, of the student community, as the bohemian side of student life. Although, of course, the agents were not the same. In Lisbon, you had fishermen and sailors and dock workers and factory workers and pickpockets and prostitutes and delinquents and bohemian newspapermen and this whole night community singing this song. Except for the latter, you wouldn't expect a very high level of literacy. And so, of course, the lyrics would be cruder and simpler. But in Coimbra, you had the young men who had read Victor Hugo and Alfred de Musset and João de Lemos and Castillo and all the Romantic poets. And so you'd have the same popular melodies, but with very high elaborated lyrics typical of an academic community. But let me give you two literary descriptions that show you how Father worked in the popular circuit and how it worked already in the middle class circuit in which it was gradually being brought in. Skipping over. This is a novel by Camilo Castelo Branco, the same writer I mentioned to you a while ago. It's called Eusébio Macário from 1879. And he has this description about one of his characters. He would play for her a father which would make his father's buttocks begin to swing unwillingly, while Custodia in the kitchen, shaken by the low notes of the guitar, would swing her hips around, tapping her foot forward in the shameless posture of one who catches the father dance. Suddenly, the mother would leave the pan and start tap dancing to the father, singing out of tune the words of Vimioso to Severa. You will dwell in the heavenly mansions with the guitar in your hands. We will make father singers out of the angels. You will raise hell. Custodia would leave everything, put her hands on her hips, start swinging them and begin to sing, with her throat ideal for naughty songs, the lyrics she had heard from Cosme, a student of Coimbra. Hey there, this is the police patrol. Halt, no one move. I want to see at close range who is in the smoke. And slap, slap, clapping her hands, stepping on the floor with her heels, with an explosive laughter in total craziness. And the brother downstairs, his cigarette on the corner of his mouth, his foot on a bench and the guitar on his thigh, would sing plaintively with intermingled eyes the apotheosis of the Severa and of Scarnicia, two famous prostitutes of Lisbon, who were born in a cradle of gold but could not even afford their funeral shrouds. She knew the whole list of martyrs of Bairro, the neighborhood of Lisbon where most of the brothels were concentrated. She felt a profound pity for all these miserable women and anticipated Hugo and Dumas Jr. in lamenting the fate of these famous prostitutes. But at the same time, Father was beginning to be sung and performed at the theaters. It was beginning to be published in scores. And of course, if you publish in musical score, it means it's intended for someone who has learned how to read music. And of course, most fado singers would not even know how to read and write their own name, much less musical notation. So of course this means that a new kind of social context was being addressed. And in this case, you've got another novel by Essed Queiroz called Cousin Basílio. And Cousin Basílio is the story of a middle-class family, an engineer, young engineer, Jorge, and his wife, Luisa. And it's all very peaceful and calm and respectable. And but suddenly, a cousin of Luisa arrives who is very seductive, and she falls for her cousin and ends up having an affair with him. And of course, that's not respectable. And what Essed Queiroz does is show us what the daily routine of this family was. And one of the things that's very typical of 19th century drawing rooms of the middle classes was to have a piano. And what would you play on the piano? Play waltzes and dances and reductions of arias from famous operas. And let's see what she plays here. In the evening, she would sit at the piano and would sing the verses of Soares de Passos, a great romantic poet in Portugal. Ah, farewell, the days are over, which I spent happily by your side. Or she would sing the ending of Traviata, so Verdi's opera Traviata. Or the Fado de Vimioso, a fado talking about Vimioso and Severa. Very sad, which he, Basílio, had taught her. She went into the living room, sat at the piano, played half-hazedly excerpts from Lucia di Lammermoor, from Sonnambula, so two operas, Lucia from Donizetti, Sonnambula from Bellini, and from the fado, and then, while playing the fado, she would stop, her fingers still lightly touching the keyboard, and would remind herself that Basílio would come the following day. He would put on his bright brown night robe. She started off with the fado, but her eyes were now closed. So it's very, very, very well done. You know, she could be playing Traviata or Sonambolo Bellini. That would be respectable. But now she's playing this despicable song that talks about illegal, disrespectful love, and she's reminding her of the body of her lover, and he's putting on his robe, and she's taking it off, of course. She's thinking of the body of her lover, and of course the good music background for that is the fado, since it's definitely an indecent, obscene song. And as I said, fado was now beginning to enter the theater. And the most famous actor in the mid-19th century, Artur Taborda, known as Actor Taborda, in 1869 was the star of a major show, of a major musical comedy, in which he would portray this young lawyer who was supposed to marry this young girl of a good family. And he was very worried because he loved fado. He loved to play the guitar. He loved to sing the fado. He loved to dance to the fado. And he was afraid that his girlfriend would not find it respectable enough to marry him. If she would find out that he liked such a despicable song, she might not want to marry him. But one day, he went to his girlfriend's place, unannounced, entered the home because the door was open, and realized that she was singing the fado. So they were matching hearts, and they were soon to be happy together. And the interesting thing is that between scenes, the main actor, while the scenery is being changed, would catch a guitar and accompany himself and would sing and improvise quatrains of fado dealing with political events and with people who were there. And the ads for the performances on the newspapers would often say, "Come tonight again because there will be new improvised verses." And this is one of the things, when I hear a fado singer express himself, says Dr. Saraiva, the young lawyer, on his instrument, he makes a gesture of someone playing the guitar. I can no longer control myself. I start feeling a tickling in my throat and in my heels. So he wants to sing, he wants to dance. When he hears a distant sound of guitar, Saraiva has a struggle. The feet, his heels, pulling him to the tap dancing of the fado. The feet immediately want to stop tap dancing, and he has to hold himself because that's too strong an appeal. And when he heard Yolanda sing the fado, his feet would immediately start to tap dance. Now, these are some important plays. 1900, a play called The Severa, talking about our heroine. These are two of the first fado singers who were authentic fado singers brought in the theater to perform, Julia Mendes and Maria Vitória. And of course, this is also can we play number 8? By the fact that fado is being brought into the theater, it means that it suffered some transformations. And one of those was that it now had a refrain that would be repeated and would be ear-catching, so that second time you'd hear it, you'd recognize it, third time you'd sing along. Hermínia Silva. Here comes the refrain. Second stanza.
Vinham já grossos das hortas para o seu balcão caturar.
So in a way it becomes a couplet.
E os fidalgos e os artistas iam para ali as mortas ouvir o Fábio cantar. Ai, velha
This was also the period in which fados started being printed. Not only there were collections of lyrics printed, but also collections of scores, musical scores, being transcribed and printed. This is a famous songbook of popular songs that was published in the 1890s, which includes some 650 popular songs of all genres, including some 60 fados. But this is a manual on how to learn the guitar without a teacher. These are compositions by João Maria dos Anjos, this guitar player at the left, who also gave the first public concert of fado in a concert hall. And some of the works he composed, a method for learning the guitar, some variations, and 3 pieces for guitar. This is a fado for piano by a Spanish-Portuguese composer called Alexandre Rei Colasso. Also, leaflets telling stories about famous fado singers of the past, the loves of Severo and Vimioso, poems for the people, almanac for the singer, the new popular songbook. And you can see these are very cheap editions. And you have some that are very elaborate, the ones that by João Maria dos Anjos, because of course if you buy a score, it's because you belong to a certain social class that could already afford a piano and learning music. In this case, these are very cheap booklets with very rough paper, with old print. And you have to remember that we are at the peak of the labor movement from the mid-19th century on, and later the socialist and anarchist movement. And all the labor movement institutions are promoting the alphabetization of the workers. And so you begin to have a public of working class readers for whom a new type of press is being established. And fado, being the song of the workers, is naturally a topic that constantly appears. So people would buy these leaflets to have some of the lyrics of the fados they knew and wanted to sing. Some of the first periodicals dedicated to fado, one called The National Song, the other one called The Modern Fado, The Song of Portugal, The Soul of Portugal. So gradually, decade after decade, new newspapers and magazines appear with publications of news about contemporary news about the life in the city, especially in the poor neighborhoods, about political events, political debates in parliament, political scandals, the minister who ran away with public funds, which of course doesn't happen anymore, as we all know. But in any case, also an interesting phenomenon is that because labor movement means labor organization, workers' organization, in 1875, precisely 150 years ago, the first left-wing political party was established, the Portuguese Socialist Party, which was the first political wing of the labor movement. And you also have a very large number of fados with lyrics that are very militant and talk about world labor movement leaders like Marx and Engels, but also the anarchists, Bakunin, Kropotkin, Proudhon, the Portuguese leader, José Fontana, and Terra Quental. So you have very socially and politically engaged lyrics attached to fado. And again, you have to understand, since this was a popular song, the most popular of songs of the working class, they cover all the topics that would characterize the life of those communities, be it the feasts, religious feasts, popular feasts, the celebrations of popular saints in June, weddings, baptisms, daily life in the circuit, and also, of course, political news that affected the life of those people. And in 1910, when the monarchy is defeated and the republic is established, fado is also very politically active, and you have many fados talking about political events. And in 1916, Portugal enters the First World War, which was terrible because the Portuguese army was not ready for the fight. They were not prepared for the weather in northern France. They were not used to the food. They were not properly trained. They were not properly armed. And in April 1917, they were smashed in a battle in northern France called Lally. And they resisted very bravely, and that managed to give the Allies an opportunity to fight back. So it was a worthy sacrifice, but it was terrible. 4,000 people died or were captured. And I'll play for you just a bit of a father that talks about the pain of the mother of a soldier. The lyrics say, when they brought the war cross to the mother of the soldier who had died, she felt the most terrible pain that a woman can feel on this planet. And she took the war cross and went to the cradle of her son and placed the medal on the cradle and start cradling it, thinking, my son, sleep well, sleep in eternal sleep. In order for you to gain this medal, how many mothers are crying just like me? And in fact, you have an enormous amount of fathers written by the soldiers themselves. And they'll describe, first of all, the enthusiasm with which they went. Okay, I'm going to go to war, I'm going to be a hero, I'm going to show how much of a man I am. And then suddenly they find themselves there, how cold it is, how terrible it is, how dirty it is, I'm covered with bugs. I can only eat corned beef, coal. And then there are these new weapons of destruction, machine guns and airplanes and tanks and gas attacks. And then there's just despair and requests for the government to come in to the trenches and fight their war themselves without actually sending innocent people to the slaughter. So we have a wealth of father lyrics talking about this life experience. Vamos ouvir bocadinho do exemplo 10.
Quando vieram dizer à pobre mãe que o filho tinha morrido lá na guerra, ela ajoelhou a tremer, sentindo bem o desgosto mais dorido que há na terra. Ela ajoelhou a tremer, sentindo bem o desgosto mais dorido que há na terra.
Okay, let me just skim through it, just to give you an idea of these successive occasions in which the game changes and father has to change along with the game, so to speak, and how it has to reinvent itself, adapting to new circumstances. 1900, the first recordings in Portugal. In 1888, the recording industry started, and in 1900 started in Portugal, and of course the first recordings were of fado. This is an ad for record players. In the hour of fado that Portugal goes through, everywhere the recordings of Aurora Teixeira, Lino Teixeira never cease to be heard. This store, besides a varied assortment of records and record players, has a wide stock of accessories for those. And then also the first restaurants and bars that start hiring fado singers to entertain their customers. In this case, it's a beer house called Jansen, listing all the singers that you can go and listen to while dining and drinking. Then 1926, the military coup that starts the dictatorship. This is General Gomes da Costa entering Lisbon at the head of the revolutionary or counter-revolutionary, I should say, troops, starting a dictatorship that was to last for 48 years until 1974. And of course, one of the first things a dictatorship does, whichever its nature, is to impose censorship. And one of the things they were afraid of songs. Because songs can carry messages that are not pleasant for dictators. And so immediately in 1927, they published a decree establishing that you could not sing in public unless you had a professional certification that was awarded by the state. This is Alfredo Marceneiro, one of the greatest fado singers and composers ever, and this is his own identity card as a professional singer. He could not perform in public without showing his ID. Plus, this is the way lyrics were usually written. You know, popular poets would write the lyrics and offer them or sell them to the singers. But now you had to take them to the censorship committee, typed, and if they liked it, they would stamp it aprovada, approved. If they didn't like it, proibida, forbidden. And at any time, if you were singing, a police officer, often in plain clothes, could come and say, show me the sheet with the approval of the censorship committee. And it was not just that you could not sing the forbidden ones, you could only sing the authorized ones. And so you can imagine the effect, the impact this had on the kind of lyrics that could be sung. Nothing that would challenge the authority of the government could be sung unless underground. But at the same time, this coincided with the same phenomenon that occurred in all types of urban popular song all over Western cultures at the time. And this is a period in which very old popular traditions that were sung on the streets and in popular bars and popular venues now entered the market and started recording, and the artists being paid to perform. That happened with the copla in Spain, it happened with the French chanson in Paris, it happened with jazz in America with the Cotton Club and some of those posh, chic places where popular artists were now being invited to sing at, albeit for an audience that had nothing to do with their original community. These were poor people coming from poor communities that were now going to perform at places where you had to pay admission fees to be admitted. And so it was a phenomenon of expansion, but at the same time a professionalization of incentive for people, gifted people, poets and composers to become professionals. And these are some of the new casas de fado, the fado houses that are still there if you care to go to them. And some of the stars. The market brings the star system to fado. So this is Berta Cardoso, whom you heard singing the song about the mother. This is Ercília Costa. This is Alfredo Marceneiro. At the left, this is Armandinho, the greatest guitar player. And the little boy who started at 8 playing, so he was born in 1921, so in 1929 he started playing in public. My father, little Mary. Cute, wasn't he? And Hermínia Silva, whom you heard singing the theater song. And some of the greatest hits sung at the theater would then be published in score, often with very elaborate covers. So you could play it and play it on the piano. Of course, a fado singer wouldn't know a piano from a bull in real life, but this was intended for a new audience. And of course, they had to be decadent, with a lot of makeup. These were bad women. Smoking, can you imagine? With short skirts. And then in 1931 came Fado the Severa, the first talkie, the first sound movie produced in Portugal, And of course, they had to go back to the icon of Severa. They knew the best way of catching the audiences was to tell them the story of someone who was a symbol of the kind of music they loved. Let's just listen to a bit of this song. It's Doze.
Oh, rua do
1931.
Capelão, juncada de rosmaninho. Oh, rua do Capelão, juncada de rosmaninho. Se o meu amor vier cedinho, eu vejo as pedras do chão que ele pisar no caminho. Se o meu amor vier cedinho, eu vejo as pedras do chão que ele pisar no caminho.
Vemos. Okay. These are some more examples of fados from the movies. Now, if a movie wanted to have popular success, it had to include fado. And, of course, a new wave of recordings, because as you know, in 1925, the electric microphone was introduced. And so the sound quality of recordings became much, much better, and that meant a major expansion of the recording industry and of the recording market, and that also affected Portugal. All these great singers who are now beginning to have a professional career in the fado houses were also given the opportunity to record and to go on radio. Radio had started in the mid-20s, and then in 1935, the national official radio station, Emissora Nacional, also started. And it's interesting because there was a major debate of whether or not to include fado in the emissions of the official state radio station of the regime. And some would say, no, this is a dirty song. This is an immoral song. This has been a subversive song. Plus, it comes from the blacks. And we're trying to celebrate the white Portuguese race. I mean, the 10th of July was the day of the race, believe it or not. To speak about the Portuguese race is a joke, because being a literal country, we are a people and a nation of mixture, and that's one of the richnesses of Portugal, of course. But in any case, those were the arguments against it. But there was a very pragmatic president of the national station, the radio station, Emissora Nacional, called Henrique Galvão, who later became a major adversary of the dictatorship. But at the time was a high-level officer of the regime, and he said, no, we have to be practical. People liked fado. If we don't play fados, they will tune in to other stations. So if you want them to listen to the speeches of Dr. Salazar, you'd better play some fados before and after, and then they'll stay and listen, which they did. And this, in 1939, a new star appears, Amália Rodrigues. She's 18, almost 19. She starts singing in one of the fado houses. He has an immediate success. Then in 1943, she starts an international career. She goes to Madrid, and then in 1944 to Rio de Janeiro, and from then on, all over the world. So a new challenge was now at stake for fado. You had to take a fado singer and take him or her from a fado house, a small space where she would not need any amplification, and she would sing 4 or 5 fados, then there would be a break, and then someone else would come in and sing 3, 4, 5 fados, and then a break. And now you had to fill a show, 1 hour, 1 hour and a half long, with fados. You had to invent a fado show. And Amália did it and sang all over the world throughout the 40s and 50s. In 1947, she went into the movies, and this is one of the movies she made, because she recorded extensively throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And at the same time, she began to challenge erudite poets, cultivated poets, to write for fado, because up to then, it was mostly some, I wouldn't say amateurs, but people who were members of the fado community, who knew exactly what kind of topics to deal with, what kind of rules of poetry to use. And in this case, Amalia thought that this poetry was a bit poor, and she wanted more, and she thought that fado could handle more than this simple poetry. And she managed to bring in great poets, and she got a French composer, but someone from a French family, but who had been born in Lisbon, Alain Ullmann, to write new melodies for her, so that she could choose whichever poems she wanted to choose, and Alain would compose a melody that would really taste like fado, she would say, and give it to her. Big scandal, because she dared to sing the poems of Camões, the greatest Portuguese poet of the 16th century, the greatest poet of the Portuguese language ever. And so it was a scandal. How did she dare bring down Camões to such a low level? Whereas the fado people say, well, why would she need Camões? Why is she now is singing Picasso-like lyrics that we cannot understand? But she was an agent of change, not only in terms of this international presentation of fado all over the world for audiences who often would not speak a word of Portuguese and yet related to the artistic message that she would bring in. These are some other singers. Lucília do Carmo, whom we heard, Fernanda Maria, who just died, Beatriz da Conceição, Argentina Santos, whom you heard singing the Fado Menor a while ago, Alfredo Marceneiro, whom you know already, Carlos Ramos, Fernando Farinha, Manuel de Almeida, Fernando Maurício, João Ferreira Rosa, Carlos do Carmo. And here we are in 74. And what happened, to make a long story short, is that throughout the dictatorship's attitude towards fado evolved. At first, until the end of the Second World War, fado was seen as dangerous and suspicious, and the regime's greatest concern was how to control it, how to survey it, how to forbid it if it was challenging. And there were always political police agents in all the fado houses in order to know exactly what these people were singing. But then, by the end of the Second World War, the wrong people won. I mean, the wrong people for the dictatorship, because we had a fascist dictatorship similar to the Italian fascism or German Nazism or any of the other dictatorial regimes in Central Europe that had participated in the Axis powers. And who won? Well, Western democracies and Russian communism. So the adversaries of the regime. And there was a strong likelihood that the winning allies would not allow for the two remaining fascist dictatorships in Europe to stay in power. In Spain, the Franco regime; in Portugal, the Salazar regime. And so Salazar, who was very clever, decided to adapt. And he promised that he would hold elections as free as in free England, as he would say. Of course, it was a fraud, but in any case, the regime felt the need to adapt and to phase down the manifestations, the public manifestations that were more clearly identifiable as fascist in nature. For instance, the manifestations the marches down the avenues with the raised arm, or any of the symbols that were very clearly recognizable as being akin to the fascist regimes that had been defeated in the war. And so it tried to present itself more as a sort of paternalistic regime, an authoritarian regime that would take care of things for people so that they wouldn't have to worry about politics. It would be traditionalist, but protective, fatherly to some extent. And so they started using traditional culture as a sort of a symbol of their power, or the legitimacy, alleged legitimacy of their power. And father was useful because father often talked about resignation to fate and to destiny. One has to accept the fate which was given to him or to her at birth. And so that went well. I mean, if I'm poor, I have to be resigned to the fact that I'm poor, and in the next life perhaps things will be better. I better take it with patience. And so this message of resignation, which was not intended in that sense at all at first, became objectively an ally to the manipulation of people under the dictatorship. And so this means that the democratic opposition began to criticize and literally to hate father. And people would say that there are 3 F's for the Portuguese fascism: Fatima, the shrine of the Virgin, football, and fado. The 3 manipulations supposedly holding people back from fighting against the dictatorship. And that means that when the democracy was restored in the 24th of April 1974, you have the soldiers with their coronations on their guns, father was almost banished from radio and television. Was never officially banished, but there was a feeling that it would die with the regime to which it had associated itself. And there was a major exception, Carlos do Carmo, who in 1976, who was a famous fadista, son of Lucília do Carmo, a great fado singer herself. And he was a left-wing thinker. He had always been akin to the democratic opposition. And so people knew he was not a fascist. And he also brought in new poets and new composers to try to give some fresh air to fado, particularly in 1977 in an album called O Homem na Cidade. I'm just going to give you a touch of 24, por favor. This song, written by a composer who was a jazz musician, José Luís Tinoco, with lyrics by famous Portuguese poet called José Carlos Ari dos Santos.
Uma roseira entrelaçada, uma videira de esperança, tal qual o corpo da cidade, que manhã cedo ensaia a dança de quem por força da vontade de trabalhar nunca se cansa. Vou pela rua desta lua que no meu tejo acende o cio. Vou por Lisboa, maré nua que deságua no rocio.
And in fact, it worked. Not only it opened new doors for fado, but also it gave fado a sort of new legitimation that would help it detach itself from this memory of its forced association to the deposed dictatorship, which was unfair to start with, of course, but still in the collective mind it was still very strong. And gradually through the 80s and 90s, a new generation of young fado singers emerged. And this is important because this is the period, the postmodern period, in which you're dealing with globalization. And so young people all over the world want to celebrate the same rituals to some extent. They want to belong to a worldwide generation. And so they want to listen to the same music that's listened to in New York and in Ouagadougou and in Bogota and in the Seychelles. And of course, this means they consume the products of the same worldwide market. And they feel good about it because it means that they're connected with the people of their own generation. Plus, of course, you have the new technologies allowing for that connection to be stronger and stronger and have access to partners, so to speak, all over the world. But at the same time, they felt the need for local identity. And they balanced this need for an international participation in a worldwide move with the feeling that, yes, but we do have different roots, and we like to be different at the same time. And Fado showed to be a good vehicle for that affirmation of national identity. And so suddenly the young people, perhaps also because their parents didn't like Fado, so there must be something good about Fado, if mom and dad doesn't like it. So in any case, the fact that a new generation appeared from the late 1980s on, and up to now, 2025, we're seeing every year new Fado singers appearing, not only from the traditional old neighborhoods in Lisbon where families naturally sang Fado, but from all over the country, people from Algarve, from Trás-os-Montes, from the Azores Islands, who feel attracted to Fado and to the heritage of old Fado. And the interesting thing is that you have exactly the same two aspects that I started by mentioning. Fado persists in the sense that these young performers are very aware of the tradition they come from and of the great Fado singers of the past, and they like to sing the repertoire that was consecrated. A bit like in America, the jazz singers like to sing the Great American Songbook, and they all sing Gershwin and Cole Porter and Hammerstein and Rogers and all the great songs that every generation sings in a different way. So they like that. But at the same time, they feel the need to adapt and to find new answers that will find, for instance, common ground with jazz and hip hop and rap and all the contemporary elements. So I would give you just two short examples to end up my presentation of both attitudes. One, a traditionalist attitude in the sense that this is an old Fado sung in a very traditional way, but with a strength that's very far from being any kind of imitation. It's just someone who carries on the torch. 27. Ricardo Ribeiro.
Tal fama mal afamada, não tenham medo da fama, tal fama mal afamada. A fama às vezes difama gente boa, gente honrada. A fama às vezes difama gente boa, gente honrada.
This was Ricardo Ribeiro singing an old Fado called Fama Mal Fama.
Explora novas formas de sintonizar a tua música
31.
com o Spotify Premium. O modo aleatório inteligente adiciona recomendações às tuas playlists para descobrir novos sons. Também podes organizar uma jam onde tu e os teus amigos podem partilhar, adicionar e ouvir música juntos. Toca na faixa para saberes mais.
Strange. Is it playing? This is Marisa singing a new composition, a new Fado by a young composer called Tiago Machado. The lyrics were by Amália. She took up a poem written by Amália herself. And it says, "O people of my land, I have now realized that I belong to you." We belong together.
As cordas de uma guitarra. Sempre que se ouve gemido numa guitarra a cantar, fica-se logo perdido.
chorar.
Okay, so these are some of the young singers, or younger singers. What I want to finish with is just a reference to the fact that we're now beginning to be able to study the history of Fado. For a long time, people would tell, the older Fado singers would tell the newer ones about the past, but there was no systematic effort to study, to register, to collect sources. And the nomination for UNESCO allowed us to develop intensely that effort, or rather, the nomination was part of a process that was ongoing. This is the catalogue of an exhibition that took place in 1994 called Fado, Voices and Shadows, and it was the first time it was chaired by an anthropologist called Joaquim Paes de Brito, and it was the first time that an effort was put on a serious academic way to put together the history of Fado. In 1999, the Museum of Fado was established, and if you enter the Museum of Fado in Alfama, the first thing you see is this panel with a sort of gallery of stars. The first one here is my father, by the way, the little boy that you had there, and all the great singers. And at the left, you have a very large anthology of traditional melodies of Fado in a score. So gathering, assembling, and publishing the repertoire. At the right, my own book for the history of Fado, Who is the History of Fado, which published that first time in 2004 and then published in several editions, translated in other languages, which has helped, with all its defects, of course, but has helped giving a reference work for the studies of Fado. And this, of course, is the logo of the candidacy and of the consecration of Fado as a heritage. But my point here was, again, just to finish up really, the fact that heritage, in this case, as in all cases, is not a petrified, frozen model. It's just a consecration of a process, a living dynamic heritage in which each generation reinvents its legacy and passes it on to the following generation, adding something new and transmitting something old. And this is the secret for the survival, therefore, the resilience of a tradition. And that's the case of Fado. Thank you.
Ok. Obrigado, Professor Roineri. We're going to make a short break, necessarily short break, of 15 minutes. Okay, and we will have, after that, the intervention of our second key speaker. Okay, thank you very much. Please be punctual.
To all the participants that are here in person and also in the virtual mode. Now we are going to we have our second invited person, the Professor Joaquim Azevedo. He comes to speak about a project that is in itself a project of resilience in its history and in the work he done with these young people. Okay, so Professor Joaquim Azevedo is graduate in history and has a PhD in educational science from the University in Lisbon. He's a professor emeritus at the Catholic University of Portugal and the president of the Manuel Leão Foundation. He currently directs the Arco Maior socio-educational project. It's a very, very interesting project. I hope you like it, the presentation, which is aimed at young people who are marginalized and drop out of the school. So is how to work with young people who have no dreams and have a society against them. I think it's a hard work to do with them. The Professor Joaquim Azevedo was also a Director General of the Ministry of Education in the decade 80s and Secretary of State of Education, and was also a member of the National Council of Education since 1960 and 2022. And he was represented Portugal in several international organizations like UNESCO, and it is the editor of 2 scientific journals on education and the author of several books and numerous articles on education and training. Their interests are school dropped, vocational education, social pedagogy, and educational innovation. So, thank you, Professor Joaquim Azevedo, to be here with us, and please, you can start your.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. I want to thank Jorge Santos and the Universidade do Algarve for the invitation. I will start by clarifying where I'm coming from. As you listen, I am a retired professor at the Portuguese Catholic University in Porto, and for the last 13 years I have been coordinating a social educational project that welcomes and educates young people who have been humiliated and marginalized and ended up leaving the school system. This has been my main everyday work, and is from this that I will talk to you about education and resilience. The project, as I said, is a social educational project that takes in and educates young people who have been marginalized in public schools in the cities of Porto and Gaia, and who are constantly dropping out and at high risk of social exclusion. We take in teenagers from the age of 15, who generally come from poor families and live in social housing states, victims of neglect by one or by both of their parents, who have grown up in contexts of family violence and abuse, who have mental health problems, and whose school careers are full of disruptive behavior and institutional violence. At Arco Maior, they can complete one school course, 6, 9, or 12 years. Arco Maior is not and does not want to be a school. It is a transactional socio-educational process and a response that is managed by Arco Maior Association and in close coordination with Ministry of Education. Since 2013, we have welcomed more than 550 students, and we currently have 4 centers with a total of 107 students. The concept resilience for this context of Arco-Maior in this specific population, the concept of resilience is a multidimensional process, biological, psychological, social, cultural, in which the adolescents develop in a framework of hospitality, care, and encouragement, the ability to trust their educators, to believe in themselves, and to learn to live together and overcome traumas and obstacles in their life journey, facing them and slowly rising up, designing new projects for their lives. Our biggest dream, greatest dream, is to no longer exist. In other words, we profoundly reject a public school that claims to be inclusive but humiliates and marginalizes some citizens, and it is there in schools and in city communities where there are such social inequalities and such deep urban segregation that we must act. This is a fundamental political dimension of our action. Our dream, in which involves the cultural, social, and political mobilization of many partners in addition to schools, is that there won't be a single student left behind in the city under any pretext. After living with, getting to know and supporting many students, I decided to do some research into what happened in the schools before they arrived to Arco-Maior. And I analyzed 25 cases based on the administrative records of each pupil, called individual pupil file. I don't accept that the analysis of dropout is confined to families, to the social, cultural, and economic contexts, and the consideration of some students and behaviors of some pupils. And I have decided to publish the article on this research in 23 and to write a book on the subject, and I called him The Mode of Production of School Exclusion in 24. In this research, I have found that there is a set of standard procedures that make up what I call the mode of production of school exclusion. And I have summarized 13 of these procedures. I say them sequentially. The schools in general detects maladjustments and conflicts early, and labels some pupils as children at risk, pupils at risk, problematic pupils. The schools draws up documentation on the deficits and the pathologies of these children students with support of some psychologists and child psychiatrists. The school triggers a set of pedagogical support measures which are almost always either more of the same, more mathematics, more Portuguese, or less of the same. For the school draws up cyclical and successive lists of disabilities of each of these pupils, which displays in assessments of each school year. This analysis that is being set up produces a distance between the educators and each student. It distances them and serves to hide identity and difference, to disqualify, to break any relationships, rather than to bring them closer to provide care and attention. Students are held back, fail, and repeat the same year several times. One of them repeats the same year 5 times, many of them 3 times. The transition from primary to lower secondary school only exacerbates the problems. Students and their families are blamed for their failure at school because they don't take up either the enormous opportunities offered to them by the school or their own abilities. In the face of increasing disruptive behavior, the school is punishing these students more and more harshly with sanctions and suspensions. Students disconnect from school and learning, they miss more and more classes, and the climate of tension and rebellion increases. These students are increasingly playing the role assigned to them, unable, repeating, rude, rebellious, with nothing to lose or gain. After several failures and many conflicts, the school sends these young people to programs specially designed for students who have already failed. And at the end, marginalized, the student concludes that school is definitely not a place for me, and leaves the school in great conflict. In conclusion, those whom the school doesn't want are being convinced that it's they who don't want school. For the past 11 years, we have been working daily with each of these young people, accompanying and helping them to rise as people, subjects, citizen, persons. They educate us how to educate them. We grow educationally together, educators and students. They were and are our most important educational resource. In the pedagogical teams at each center, we reflect act together, teachers and technicians, day by day, week by week. Everything is always open-ended. The support for each student tells us the best development trajectories to follow. We have developed pedagogy based on education paradigm of care, which can be summarized in 8 points. These 8 elements, in these 8 elements, we can perceive a pedagogy that invests in resilience. First, creating bonds and relationships of trust. We seek to create bonds in an climate of hospitality, in which you cultivate space and time for each person to be and to grow, providing as much space and time as necessary, reciprocal acceptance without recrimination or labels, and patience. These are the hallmarks of a pedagogy that allows us to communicate and to look forward together. In a social and political context that tends to lyophilize education, Arco Maior seeks to make it more thick, more human, generating relationships of trust. We learn that tenderness heals. Students and educators are sure of that. Recognition. The second. What mobilizes teachers and technicians is to co-construct with each young person a new understanding about themselves and their context, a new outlook and rediscovery made up of shared stories and experiences, respect for identities, life journeys that are always so hard and complex, with so much suffering and trauma, sometimes with apparently irreparable damage. This is why we approach the students with distance that respect for their weaknesses obliges, and place ourselves at their side with willingness and permanent support, full of hope. As uplifters. Third, attention and listening. Without attention and permanent listening on the part of the educators, it's impossible to respect and understand the people we have in front of us as students, nor can we discover with them the interests that can make them stand up and lift themselves up as pupils, subjects, persons, citizens. We learn and repeat among ourselves. If you don't listen, don't talk. Fourth, intentionality and meaning. As a team of educators, we identify and construct the educational intentionality of everything we do and what we decided not to do. We try to impregnate all schoolwork and all the activities of students and educators with meaning, with the aim of favoring the slow and progressive design of new meanings, of renewed life projects. Examples: a field trip, a debate, a student assembly, an attitude in face of disruptive behavior, the words used in moments of tension and celebration, educational activities in the kitchen, the way of being at the table, the practical work in the workshops, and so on. We learn everything has to be a meaning and an educational intentionality, and is not easy. Participation. Every day we value the active and permanent participation of students in Arco Maior and in their educational journey, and as this is one of the basic conditions for their positive development and as students and persons and citizens. Participation extends to many unusual areas in the traditional school context, from the curriculum to assessment, from defining the rules for running the school to organizing and managing spaces, from trips and study visits to organizing kitchen shifts, from rules on mobile phones to weekly internship in community institutions. We hold student assemblies at least once a week, and everything can be debated and redefined there. Sixth, common table. We value the communal table every day. Each day, a group of students prepares the meal, and all the students take part in this activity once a week. With the support of a cookery instructor, and every day we have lunch together. We never suspected that the table would be such a rich source of learning, in terms of knowing how to stay, learning how to listen, how to speak more correctly, and how to respect others, and how to develop empathy. And we learn the table is a powerful source of learning. 7, a fish a day. We value the small stones that are collected every day, even unnoticed, because it will be with them, we hope, that each young people can build a new life project, where they can live with more dignity and restart on a new path of development with meaning for themselves and supported by the community. We also support young people both in their immediate socio-professional integration and afterwards, as long as it is needed. These stones may include a conversation held with an educator that generated some satisfaction and even some joy, a visit to the city, which led to discovering opportunities for socializing and even possibilities for social integration, the writing of a text, albeit a short one, after so long without writing, drawing a picture, carrying out an exercise or a game from start to finish, gain self-esteem, making a presentation about the results of a piece of research, going for a walk with a good conversation with an educator. We learn to be patient and persistent. And 8th, we never give up on any student. We are often identified by the students, their families, and their social educational support workers as people who believe in them more than they believe in themselves. We always seek the road of encouragement and responsibility than the road of repeated punishment. We learn to be always there to care, to take care. Pedagogy can do a lot. After 11 years of social educational work and having already taken more than 550 young people, our 3 priorities are clear. Firstly, pedagogy. Secondly, pedagogy. Thirdly, pedagogy. It is pedagogy and not a paraphernalia of technicians intervening on top of each student. And it is this educational paradigm of care that can rebirth broken lives and help repair deeply troubled minds. Pedagogy can't do everything. We realize that with some dissatisfaction, frustration, and realism, but it can do a lot. The truth is that pedagogy developed in this specific alternative school context has been the basis of numerous miracles of rebirth. And now, this is the characteristics of the pedagogy. I can speak a little about curriculum, how we work with the curriculum. Always we must work with the curriculum prescribed by the Ministry of Education, but we redesigned in our pedagogical teams and at each center what to do and how to do. Each school year, we compose a sequence of 6 or 8 interdisciplinary projects, common projects to all students, and sometimes individual projects. They arise from everyday problems and challenges. They start from questions that are formulated jointly by the teachers and by the students. In addition to these common projects, we organized also individual projects whenever this proves essential to mobilize some students to schoolwork. In addition to these projects, there are workshops, oficinas, part of where young people can develop some professional projects. And this can be attended by any student 1 day a week. Here students learn in professional areas and can complete some short-term training unities, which could be useful to their social professional integration and further studies. This is the workshop, is workshop work, oficina, in practical projects and professional initiation. Our focus is on mobilizing each student willingness to learn and to experiment with other directions for their daily lives and for their future. These workshops focus on areas that could be useful for them: catering, kitchen, table, bar, electricity, mechanics, painting and carpentry, fashion, textiles, horticulture, and hairdressing. And more important, we have, each student have a road. And road is the acronym of roadmap of learning and development objectives. This roadmap is co-constructed between the pedagogical team and each student, and comprises common objectives and individual objectives, formulated both in terms of learning and in terms of social emotional competencies, to be developed in the period of the project, of each project. Each student's road is followed on a weekly basis by a guidance counselor teacher, tutor, with a view to assessing the conditions of its implementation, favoring the achievement of the objectives initially co-defined between the pedagogical team and each student, and, if necessary, reviewing and changing objectives and activities. The encouragement is the basis of our curricular development. We do that with total flexibility. And this is the only way to encourage each student to develop concrete and meaningful school work. We learn that kindness and firmness guide our pedagogical action. We have already learned from young people that they listen more and better to our actions than to our words. Coming from schools where great moral principles and continuous moralistic speeches abound, we prefer to follow the ethics of care with these teenagers, walking alongside them, getting our hands dirty with them, speaking little and acting, always asking for meaning. Until one day, perhaps through the accumulation of small achievements or storms, it may be the day of the discovery of a new life goal, the day of the decision to take a new life path, the day of a new beginning. They live to design their lives, talking the old ones with them, with more peace and resilience. After all, that's what we exist for. The text has a description of our organizational model, but I pass that. And we can go to 44. You can pass. Tick, 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 tick. Yes. Porto is our partners and our people. In conclusion, every day is a time of new beginnings, a time of hope because nothing is closed, anything can happen, we always can begin, and that's education. It sounds extraordinary, doesn't it? And it all seems too simple. But it is difficult, really very difficult. And sometimes new beginnings don't happen. And what happens is compulsory internment, imprisonment, or simply abandoning this alternative social educational opportunity. And we lose around 14% of the young people entrusted to us. In the meantime, this will continue to be our fight until there are no public schools humiliating and marginalizing certain students, subjects, citizens. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to Professor Joaquim Azevedo for your presentation. It was very interesting and an example of how to work resilience with these young people that are excluded from the school. And it was very interesting to know that your pedagogical process about motivation, about tenderness, it's an humanistic and dialogical in the sense of Paulo Freire, with the students, and to help them through reconstruction, have a reconstruction of their auto-esteem, self-esteem, and identity. Yes, to like more of them. They must be like more, to be with themselves. So create a new image for the society, to be in society. Well, we finished our work in the morning. I hope you like it, the two presentations. I want to thank to Professor Joaquim Azevedo, but also to Professor Neri, his presentation, which was both very interesting, and both speak about resilience in different areas, but is the main subject of our Congress, resilience. So now you must go to lunch, but before, not yet. I have some informations to give you. First, in the afternoon, the workshops will be not here in this building, but in the building of the School of Education and Communication that is near the place where we are going to lunch, so no problem, okay? There will be some students to help you to find the building. It's when you go out, it's on your left or right. All right. And if you want to know in which workshop you are going to participate, the secretary has the name of the persons and the participants in each workshop, okay? However, at the door of each workshop, there is a list of the participants, okay? No problem, okay? So if you have any difficulty, you can speak with one of us, okay? So have a good lunch. Thank you for your attention, for you here in the room, and also for all the people that are participating and working with us very far. Thank you. Five p.m. So for the people that is online, sorry, I forgot this information important. You must be here at 5 p.m. For the plenary conference with Boris Cyrulnik that is going to speak Pourquoi la résilience? So for the participants online, okay? 5 p.m., okay? For the others, we return here, okay? After the workshops, we return here, okay? Thank you.